And I'm going to be, and then I'm going to be live streaming. And Curran is here to help make sure we are doing everything correctly. Give me a quick second while I turn on the live stream. It's a bit delayed, apologies. Hi, folks. Thank you for joining us. If folks are already on with the regular Zoom webinar, we will start momentarily as soon as we get the Facebook Live broadcast going in just a minute. Thank you so much for waiting. My name is Francisco Dueñas with Housing Now. We've got some great tenant stories today, along with the Assembly Member Lee, author of AB 854, to share their testimony and the reasons why they're working on this bill with everybody. So we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, well, I am going to get us started. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. My name is Francisco Dueñas. I'm with Housing Now. We're a statewide housing justice advocacy coalition made up of over 150 different community, labor unions, policy groups, all working together to increase housing stability, housing affordability, and greater protections for our tenants and homeowners across the state of California, particularly for low-income community members, especially those of color. We've got a great panel for you today of advocates and tenants, and of one assembly member champion in particular that we want you to hear from. So I wanted to first turn it over to him about why we need AB 854. That is the bill that we are coming together to fight for and champion today. And so please let me first turn it over to Assembly Member Lee. Assembly Member Lee, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our press conference about our bill, Assembly Bill 854, to reform the Ellis Act. I'm Assembly Member Alex Lee, and I have the great honor of representing the 25th Assembly District, which includes Alameda and Santa Clara County. So our bill, Assembly Bill 854, reforms the Ellis Act and ends the revolving door of evictions by creating a 5-year holding period before the Ellis Act can be used so it can deter speculator abuse. So the Ellis Act is a 1984 California state law that allows landlords to evict residential tenants when they leave the rental business. While the Ellis Act was originally passed to protect small mom and pop landlords who could no longer tend to their rental property and wanted to get out of the rental business, a series of court decisions has vastly expanded the Act's reach by allowing owners to convert their units to ownership, like condominiums. This has led to a revolving door of evictions as speculators buy rent control buildings, evict the tenants, and then make a profit. This removes units from our affordable housing supply and displaces our residents. This is especially cruel and especially inhumane during a pandemic because Ellis Act evictions disproportionately impact some of our most vulnerable residents. They are evicted from the communities that they've been living in for years without any way to afford to live there after. So why the 5-year holding period? Studies show that 78% of Ellis Act evictions occur within the first 5 years of the owner purchasing the property, and 1/3 of units are Ellis by known serial evictors. By imposing a 5-year holding period before the Ellis Act can be used, meaning an owner must own a property for 5 years, a speculative abuse of the Ellis Act would be deterred, while the statutory right of long-term landlords to get out of the rental business would still be preserved. Meaning if a landlord has had their property for more than 5 years, no matter when that started, since the 80s, the 90s, the 70s, they can still use it as long as they've owned it for 5 years. So AB 854 will apply to jurisdictions with rent control laws in place. And there are 29 jurisdictions with rent control in California, or about 6% of all cities. So we're already in a housing crisis in California, as everyone knows, and speculators using the Ellis Act to quickly turn a profit remove badly needed affordable units from the market. Since 2001, over 27,000 units in Los Angeles have been taken off the rental market using the Ellis Act, which has displaced over 60,000 Los Angeles residents alone, just in Los Angeles. And in San Francisco, over 5,400 households have been forced out of their homes. It's more important now than ever that we ensure that people stay housed during the pandemic, and especially during the housing crisis. And that's why it's so important that AB 854 passes the Assembly Housing Community Development Committee this Wednesday, and why we need this bill signed into law. And now I'd like to turn it over to Archie, an LA resident who's been impacted directly, to share their story.
Thank you. My name is Archie Sylvester, and I'm a tenant facing an Ellis eviction in Los Angeles. So I live in a 5-unit rent control building bought in the 60s by Holocaust survivors. They bought the building wanting to provide affordable housing for other immigrants. So as tenants passed on, the building became occupied by long-term tenants who have lived here for over 1, 2, and even over 4 decades. The surviving owner just died, unfortunately, at 98 years old, and her children are now selling to a property investment firm. The ink hasn't even dried on the contract. Escrow hasn't even closed, and they've told us that they'll be Ellising the building as soon as the LA COVID protections have expired. So my neighbors, Russian immigrants who've lived here for over 42 years, they just lost their son to stomach cancer, and they're both now battling cancer themselves. If the building is Ellised, we'll all possibly become homeless. These neighbors have no money, no friends, no family, nothing. And with a pittance of relocation money and no comparable price housing in the area, will likely be pushed out of the city, maybe the state, and perhaps onto the streets. Dependence on our social network of friends, neighbors, doctors, and pharmacies and schools will be completely destroyed. This is the immeasurable cruelty caused by the Ellis Act. There is a human impact to this, a community impact, a societal impact, an economic impact, and most of all, a human impact that lies behind egregious abuses of the Ellis Act. We all now have to live under this black cloud of paralyzing fear that our home will be ripped out from under us. As tenants, we were once an asset to landlords, and now we're simply a cancer that needs to be cut out and destroyed. The rights that we have fought for decades have been extinguished with a simple Ellis Act application. We feel defenseless and with our protections gone just like a puff of smoke. Can you imagine the damage that this does to your mental health and your feeling of safety and stability? Shelter is a fundamental human need, and the Ellis Act is a threat to that. It appears these greedy developers believe that because we're not paying the rents that they think we should, that we're not deserving of shelter. This isn't just a tenants' rights issue, it's a human rights issue, and is only adding to the shocking rise of homelessness here in LA and throughout California. My personal story is one of thousands. The Coalition for Economic Survival, a co-sponsor of the AB 854 that tracks Ellis evictions, have documented that since 2001, we've lost an astounding 27,500 rent-controlled affordable units in LA due to the Ellis Act. Without AB 854 passing, my neighbors and I and many others will be added to that alarming number. We deserve to have peace of mind to continue living without debilitating fear. That's why it's crucial that the legislature passes AB 854 to make this extremely minuscule, very modest change that will not, I repeat, will not impact Ma and Pa landlords on any level, but will make an incalculable difference to tenants. Opponents cannot continue to spout deluded and incredulous hypothecations of what a minute modification to the Ellis Act would do, with propaganda like AB 854 means stay in business forever. This is fear-based, not fact-based. This perpetual egregious abuse of this loophole is nothing short of inhumane. The opponents of any change of this act have been able to assert atrocious dominion for too long. We deserve change, a small change, a long overdue change that will make a huge difference to tenants, to homelessness, to our lives, to our rights to shelter, and to humanity as a whole. Change needs to happen now. AB 854 must be passed. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Archie. Thank you so much for your testimony and your experience. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Lee. We have other tenants from across the state that we wanted to also hear from. I'm going to first turn it over to Raquel, who is working with a couple of tenants in San Francisco. Raquel, if you could introduce yourself and your organization.
Sure. My name is Raquel Fox, and I'm a senior staff attorney at the Tenderloin Housing Clinic. I've been here almost 28 years next month, and I completely agree with what Archie said. The change of this holding period will only protect long-term tenants and also at the same time allow people that have owned their property for some time to be able to sell it, or I'm sorry, to be able to use the Ellis Act. I've seen over the years the abuse of the Ellis Act, fraudulent use in my opinion as well. I've seen where real estate speculators have used the Ellis Act and then applied for permission to convert to condo or to subdivide as tenancy in common, and within the application itself state that unsold units may be rented. So it's not even, I want to come out of the rental market, it's I want you out so that I can sell. Maria, who is here with us, and Humberto are tenants that were victims of the Ellis Act themselves. Maria moved in 1978. Single mom, widow, raised 4 children there. And when her 3 of the 4 children moved out, she rented to Humberto and Bill. They were there since 2010, and in 2019, the Ellis Act was invoked. You'll hear more from them personally how it's impacted them, but our organization is at the forefront of fighting these Ellis Act evictions. We have been fighting now for, it seems, decades. The last case that I had that actually went to trial, the jury found in our favor, and the jury allowed my client to remain in her home of, I think, 46 years here in San Francisco on Church Street. So I think the general population and the general public is behind change and protection. No one wants to see more people out in the streets, and the propaganda that you have to remain in the rental market if this is passed is literally nonsense. 1, you can always sell. 2, don't buy a building that is a rental building if you don't want to be in the rental market. It's like buying a Volkswagen and saying, I really want a Cadillac, so I'm going to start taking parts from the Cadillac to make this car into a Cadillac and not a Volkswagen. So don't buy rental property if you don't want to be in the residential rental market. And again, as Archie pointed out, the holding period is 5 years. So the long-term landlords are not at all impacted by this. So that's about it that I have to say for now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raquel. And Maria and Humberto sharing some words as well.
Yes.
María, por favor. Thank you.
Esa es tu historia, María. ¿Cómo te impactó a ti?
Bueno, me impactó demasiado porque las rentas están carísimas y no sabía para dónde iba a agarrar. Porque después de estar aquí 45 años y las rentas están carísimas, no sé qué iba a hacer, pero bueno, ahí luché con el landlord y la doctora, pues, para que me ayudara. Pero la cosa es que uno se tiene que ir a dormir a las calles en un sleeping bag, que si no tiene familia ni nada, ahí tiene que terminar en la calle, como tanta gente que ha estado tirada de las casas y van a las calles. Todo el mundo está en la calle con el sleeping bag, porque no hayan a dónde vivir. Pero me ha impactado bastante, sí, mucho, sí. Ahora a ti.
Yeah, I'm Humberto. I'm also here with Maria. She rented to me back in 2010, and in 2019, as Raquel said, we were served with eviction notice under the Ellis Act. And I've also been injured at work, so I'm also disabled. And pretty much we've lost our place. We have nowhere to go. Myself, I'm going to be homeless. I'll be jumping from couch to couch. I have really nowhere to go. Rents are extremely high. I'm on a limited income. I cannot afford to go anywhere else. And so it's extremely stressful. Just in our neighborhood alone, we've got a lot of people now that are living in the streets because they've been evicted out of their apartments due to the Ellis Act. It has the homelessness here has increased because of the Ellis Act. And people don't know where to go. There's some people out here on the streets that still have a part-time job, but they can't afford anywhere, and they're living out of tents. They're living out of their cars. The police keep coming around and kicking everybody off the streets. They're trying to get people into shelters. Shelters are also they're not safe places to go. I've been in some of these places and they're filthy. You can't even sleep in some of these places sometimes because you're worried that your things or your belongings are going to get stolen, or you're going to get robbed yourself. And this Ellis Act has to definitely be turned over to protect people's rights. This is ridiculous what's happening. This is another reason why homelessness is risen in this city and across the state. Landlords, they're out to make more money. But what about the people? What about us? Where are we going to go? We're stuck in the streets, and that's no place to raise a family. I know people out here right now that they've got an entire family living in the street in tents because they've lost their home due to this Ellis Act. Where are we going to go? So things need to change, and they need to change right now. As Archie said, this is about humanity. This is not, about the laws that were just put in place over this Ellis Act several years back. It's impacting people tremendously, and apparently, the landlords, they don't see that. They're after their own money. They want to see how much more money they can stick in their pockets. But what about the people? They don't care. So it's time that things change, and they need to change right now.
Thank you so much for that.
Homeless. I got nowhere to go.
Thank you so much for that, Humberto. Let me translate briefly what Maria was saying earlier before your comments, Humberto. Maria had mentioned that she had been in her apartment for over 40 years and that it's been very difficult. And when people don't have another place to go, when they get kicked out of their homes, they do end up on the streets sleeping in sleeping bags. And so she's mentioned that she has been fighting this Ellis Act eviction alongside I think her attorney, and but it's a very stressful situation. Maria, did I capture that right? Did I miss anything?
¿Qué dijo?
Que si lo capturó como tú lo dijiste.
Estaba traduciendo lo que había dicho.
Que él lo estaba traduciendo lo que tú habías
Ah,
dicho.
sí, sí, sí.
Okay. Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you so much, Maria and Humberto from
Yes.
San Francisco. And the
Yeah.
last tenant we have today, his voice is from Gabriel Guzman in the San Diego area. Gabriel.
Hey, how you guys doing? My name's Gabriel Guzman. I'm a member of ACE and a Marine Corps veteran. And excuse me if I'm a little bit under the weather because COVID finally caught me. Me and my wife got infected Friday, so we've been under the weather. But anyways, myself and my family, we got evicted at the peak of the pandemic with the landlords utilizing some loopholes to be able to evict us. Fortunately enough, we were able to find a home after being homeless for about a month. We found a home a little bit smaller, but we're just happy to have a roof over our head. And we've been here a year. And on January 4th, we actually received a 60-day notice. And as I've looked around for other places, everything that's around here is over $400 more than what we originally got the place for. And those are kind of the side effects of people kicking people out under the Ellis Act, because they'll raise and push the envelope on the rents, and even mom and pops landlords will follow that because they'll raise the rents as it's allowed. And with us still not being fully employed, and now having an eviction on my record, I have no idea what we're gonna do. And with the unit, supposedly what was put on the 60-day notice that the landlord's going to move back in doesn't make any sense, because this has been predominantly a rental for the last 10 years. But like I said, I don't know what we're going to do. And so there needs to be protections, because if there's protections under the Ellis Act, it's modified, then rents won't change within a year, $400 or $500. It will stabilize and stabilize the housing for my kids.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you for sharing your story, and I hope you get better soon. I'm sorry to hear that you are sick.
It finally caught us. So we
Okay.
dodged it for a year, a little bit
Yes.
over a year. So it finally got us.
Yes, I feel many people across California are experiencing the same thing. We have one final tenant as well from the San Diego area. Patty, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me too?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes. Patty, please introduce yourself and share your story.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Hello, my name is Patty Medina. I am an ACE member, and I'm living in the San Diego area. I've been living here for over 8 years, and with my son and my 2 daughters. Started in January of last year, I received an invalid 60-day notice. The landlord's daughter called me to start harassing me in the middle of the pandemic. I contacted legal aid and ACE for help, where I learned about my tenants' rights. Meanwhile, in February, my mother passed away. Half an hour later, I received an intimidating text from the landlord's daughter to move out. I got so much stress, I'm disabled. And 2 weeks later, I got an infection in my bloodstream and I almost died. In March, I received a 90 days notice using the Ellis Act, and made the board of supervisors pass a law stopping all evictions until October. But my landlord found another way to evict me by asking $1,200 increase that was approved by San Diego Housing Commission. I have Section 8, and even though I've been paying my rent, this happened. I asked the landlord to fix my 2 bedrooms, my bathroom and my toilet, because it broke down. The landlord fixed it, but also he gave me another 90-day notice using the Ellis Act that is going to expire in 2 weeks. I have been trying to look since January last year for a place to live, but the higher rents, applications, and credit fees make things so hard because most renters don't want to rent me because I have Section 8. This is a life and death situation. My life is being detained, affecting my health with stress, fear, because my landlord is keep finding reasons to how to evict me. There's no way to stop him. Please protect us by passing AB 854 to keep thousands of families at home, stop landlord, big managements, and corporate companies buying our neighborhoods, and displace us because they're being greedy and not caring about family getting homeless. Help us keep our freedom, dignity, and respect as human beings. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Patty. Really, thank you very much for sharing your story and testimony. As folks have heard from tenants across the state in different parts from Bay Area to Los Angeles to the San Diego area, this issue is affecting not just tenants and their lives and their family lives, but communities as a whole, as many have already mentioned as well. This is a webinar, but I think reporters, if you have particular questions, if you want to use the Q&A function of the webinar, we can ask any panelist a particular question you might have, or we might be able to connect you directly for a follow-up interview with any of our tenants and or our lead author champion, Assemblymember Lee. So let me give it a minute to see if there are any particular questions that come up on the Q&A function of Zoom. This is located at the bottom, on the bottom options. There's a little two blurb comment clouds there that say Q&A. Okay, wonderful. We've got somebody who would like to talk to Patty after the call. Patty, if you could put your email, or let me put my email in the chat, and that way I can connect anybody who would like to follow up directly with our tenants and other panelists. Are there any other particular questions? Sandy is wondering what's the situation like in the Inland Empire. I'm wondering if Assemblymember Lee, or if I don't know if any of our tenants have particular feedback on that question.
I mean, I don't have any specific feedback about the geographic, but of course, this being a state law, if we were able to change this at the state level, it would affect the entire state, including the Inland Empire or wherever the person asking from is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Sandy. And I will say, capturing eviction data information across the state is very difficult. Part of that is due to positive aspects of California wanting to mask, for tenants who've gone through maybe, they didn't actually get evicted, but their landlord has been trying to get them evicted. We don't want them impacted by that. But in general, it's also been very hard to compile data on evictions and see a statewide. So I think we also need to be better, get better data around that. And the question that's coming in on the chat is, how soon would we see change if passed? What are next steps essentially? That's a really good one and a great way to move us forward and conclude today's press conference. Assemblymember Lee, can you remind us where we're at in the process and what are the various steps for AB 854?
Absolutely, it's a fantastic question. So the bill is up for its first vote on Wednesday. And if all goes to plan throughout the legislative process, the bill would be signed and go into effect January 1st, 2023. So any property owner, 5 years minus 2023, so 2018, if they have not owned it before 2018, if I did my math right, 2018, this would affect those properties. So hopefully we'd see the change starting January 1st, but we need everyone's commitment and advocacy as much as possible to get the finish line. There are a lot of moneyed interests that don't want this to pass, even though there's a very reasonable protection for renters and residents. But that's kind of next steps. And so hopefully we would see this take effect immediately, the 1st of January next year.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Lee. I wanted to call on or have our colleagues in the Capitol. We do have an art installation taking place currently on the Capitol lawn. I think, Sarah, for us to see you, let me see. I think I may be able to have folks, I don't know if your video might be off at the moment. So not sure if you're able to come back on video and show us the scene. If not, we will definitely share pictures of what the scene looks like currently in the Capitol with our banners and various art installation there. I don't think Sarah is able to get the video up. Okay, well, unless there's any other questions, give me a second. Oh, I don't think we're able to hear you.
I'll show you.
Yeah, sorry, we can't hear you. There was a question about whether we're putting the recording available of the webinar, and we will be sharing that recording to everybody. So if you registered for this webinar, you will be receiving a link to the recording. So as well as on Wednesday, we are having a watch party for the Assembly Housing Committee, where you can register as well. I'm putting that in the chat. We can watch the Assembly Housing Committee with us on Wednesday morning, 9:30. And let me add that link. And thank you very much, everybody, all the tenants that joined with us today, from Archie in West Hollywood to Maria and Humberto in San Francisco, and Patty and Gabriel in the San Diego area, Raquel as well, for all your advocacy work and on behalf of tenants, and obviously our state legislator champion, Assemblymember Lee. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all these stories about why we really need to change this law. And please, if you would like any further questions about this bill, please go ahead and email me. And I'm also happy to connect you with any of the panelists that joined us today, sharing my email again in the chat. Thanks again. And looking forward to moving this bill forward this year, especially this week. So thanks again, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Take care.